Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the human embassy station, watching the massive Krillian dreadnoughts drift through space like metallic mountains. Their dark hulls gleamed under the light of 3 suns, each ship easily 10 times the size of anything humanity had ever built. The sight should have been impressive, maybe even intimidating. Instead, it just made her tired. Still gawking at the big boys? Commander Jake Morrison joined her at the viewport, holding 2 cups of coffee. The steam rose in thin wisps, one of the few comforts that reminded them both of home. Sarah accepted the cup gratefully. Just trying to figure out how we ended up here. You mean how we went from discovering faster-than-light travel to becoming the galaxy's pet project in less than 50 years? Jake took a sip and grimaced. Station coffee still tastes like recycled water. Everything here tastes like recycled water. Sarah turned away from the window. Have you read the latest reports from the Galactic Council sessions? Jake nodded, his expression growing serious. The Vrex delegation called us charmingly primitive yesterday. The Zephyrians suggested we might be ready for junior observer status in another century or 2. Junior observer status. Sarah repeated the words like they tasted bitter. We've been full members of the galactic community for 12 years, and they still talk about us like we're children playing dress-up. The human embassy station orbited the neutral world of Kepler Prime, serving as humanity's primary diplomatic outpost in a galaxy that seemed determined to pat them on the head and send them to the kids' table. Every major species had similar stations here, but theirs was notably smaller, tucked away in a corner of the system like an afterthought. Ambassador Williams wants to see you, Jake said, changing the subject. Something about the trade negotiations with the hegemony. Sarah finished her coffee and straightened her uniform. The Terran Federation military dress uniform looked sharp, but she'd noticed how other species' representatives barely glanced at it. To them, human military might was probably about as threatening as a child's toy soldier. Ambassador Williams' office occupied the station's top level, with a panoramic view of the diplomatic quarter. When Sarah entered, she found the older man staring at a holographic display showing trade route projections. Captain Chen, thank you for coming. Williams gestured to a chair. I wanted to discuss the situation with the hegemony trade talks. The hegemony controlled the richest mining systems in the galaxy's core regions. Their crystalline cities were legendary, built from materials that could withstand the radiation of binary pulsars. They were also notoriously difficult to negotiate with. They're still refusing our proposals? Sarah asked. Worse, they're not even taking the meeting seriously anymore. Williams deactivated the display and sat heavily in his chair. Yesterday, the hegemony representative actually laughed during our presentation. Laughed, Sarah. When we offered to provide security escorts for their mining convoys, he said it was like offering to protect a fortress with paper airplanes. Sarah felt heat rise in her chest. What exactly did he mean by that? He meant that in a galaxy where the average patrol ship has enough firepower to crack a moon, our biggest dreadnought looks like a scouting vessel. Williams rubbed his temples. The numbers don't lie, Captain. A single Krillian battleship has more firepower than our entire home fleet. Firepower isn't everything, Sarah said, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. Tell that to the hegemony, or the Vrex, or any of the other species that measure worth in terms of how many star systems you can sterilize per hour. Williams stood and walked to the window. Do you know what the real problem is, Sarah? Enlighten me. They don't see us as equals because we can't make them afraid. Every major species in this galaxy earned their place through strength. The Krillians conquered half the galaxy before establishing their empire. The Vrex fought a 300-year war against the machine intelligences and won. The Zephyrians tamed black holes and used them as power sources. Williams turned back to her. And us? We showed up with chemical rockets and nuclear weapons talking about peace and cooperation. They think we're naive children who don't understand how the real galaxy works. Sarah stood up, pacing to the window. Below, she could see the diplomatic quarters' main plaza, where representatives from dozens of species conducted the galaxy's business. Tall, graceful Zephyrians glided past bulky Krillian warriors. Crystalline hegemony delegates refracted light as they moved, creating rainbow patterns on the ground, and scattered throughout, looking small and unremarkable, were humans. "What about our technological advantages?" Sarah asked. "Our AI systems, our medical technology?" "Cute parlor tricks, according to the VRX Science Council. They acknowledge that we're clever, but clever doesn't earn respect in galactic politics." Williams joined her at the window. "The latest intelligence reports show that pirate activity has increased by 300% in the Outer Rim territories. The established powers aren't doing anything about it because it doesn't affect their core systems. And the Outer Rim is where most human colonies are located." "Exactly. We've filed formal complaints with the Galactic Security Council, but they keep referring us to the appropriate subcommittees and regulatory review boards." Williams' voice carried barely contained frustration. "Meanwhile, our people are being attacked by raiders using modified Krillian weapons and Vrex shield technology." Sarah turned from the window. "What does Earth Command want us to do about it?" "That's the interesting question." Williams walked back to his desk and activated a secure channel. "This morning I received new orders directly from Admiral Harrison." The holographic display showed a middle-aged woman in a Terran Federation admiral's uniform. Sarah had met Admiral Harrison once, during the ceremony when she received her current assignment. The woman had a reputation for tactical brilliance and an absolute refusal to back down from a fight. "Ambassador Williams, Captain Chen," the recording began. "By now you're both aware of the increasing pirate activity in the Outer Rim territories and the Galactic Council's unwillingness to address the situation. I'm sending this message to inform you that Earth Command has developed a new approach to the problem." Sarah felt something change in the room's atmosphere, a subtle shift that made her stand straighter. "Effective immediately, Captain Chen. You are being given command of a special task force designated Razor's Edge. Your mission is to conduct anti-piracy operations in the Outer Rim territories, with full authorization to engage hostile forces as necessary." The Admiral paused, and something that might have been a smile crossed her face. "Your task force consists of the experimental stealth corvette Phantom, along with two of our newest frigates, Wolverine and Taipan. All three ships have been equipped with classified technology that should level the playing field considerably. Captain Chen, you are authorized to use any means necessary to protect human interests and demonstrate that humanity is not the helpless species the galaxy believes us to be." The message ended, leaving the room in silence. "Stealth corvette?" Sarah asked. "I thought our stealth technology was still in development." "Apparently, it's been in development for longer than most people realized." Williams handed her a data pad. "Your ship specifications, crew assignments, and operational parameters. Everything you need to know about your new command." Sarah scanned the information, her eyes widening as she read. The Phantom was unlike anything in the official fleet records. Its power signature was a fraction of comparable vessels, but its weapons loadout was impressive by human standards. More importantly, it carried something called a quantum disruption array that she'd never heard of before. "What's a quantum disruption array?" she asked. "I was hoping you might know. The technical specifications are classified above my level." Williams sat back down. "What I can tell you is that your new ships were built at the Titan shipyards in complete secrecy. Only a handful of people know they exist." Sarah looked up from the data pad. "How many ships are we talking about?" The message mentioned 3. 3 ships. Total crew of about 200 personnel. All volunteers with exemplary service records. Williams's expression grew serious. "Sarah, this isn't a traditional assignment. Earth Command is sending you out there with experimental technology and minimal support. If something goes wrong, officially you'll be a rogue task force acting without authorization. And unofficially? Unofficially, you'll be proving that humans deserve a seat at the adults' table. Sarah studied the ship specifications again. The Phantom's stats were impressive, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something important. 3 ships against the entire pirate network seemed like a suicide mission, even with advanced technology. "When do I meet my ships?" she asked. "Tomorrow. They're docked at the military section of the station in the restricted access bays." Williams stood up. "Sarah, I want you to understand something. This mission could change everything for humanity. If you succeed, it might be the first step toward earning real respect in galactic politics. If I fail, we'll still be the galaxy's favorite pet project." Sarah tucked the datapad under her arm. "I understand, Ambassador." As she left the office, Sarah's mind raced through the implications of her new assignment. Somewhere in the Outer Rim territories, pirates were preying on human settlements with impunity. The galaxy's major powers were ignoring the problem because it didn't affect their interests. And now Earth Command was sending her out with 3 experimental ships and a crew of 200 to solve a problem that an entire galaxy refused to address. The corridor leading to the military section was longer than she remembered, or maybe she was just walking slower. Her reflection in the polished walls showed a woman in her early 30s, career military, with the kind of confident posture that came from years of training and combat experience. But tonight, she looked tired. The restricted access bay required 3 different security clearances to enter. When the final door opened, Sarah stepped into a cavernous space that hummed with barely contained energy. In the center of the bay, 3 ships waited in their docking cradles. The first thing she noticed was how different they looked from standard Terran Federation vessels. Where human ships typically had clean lines and bright hull markings, these 3 were matte black with angular surfaces that seemed to absorb light. They looked like sharks built from shadow and steel. "Impressive, aren't they?" A voice behind her made her turn. A tall man in commander's stripes approached, extending his hand. "Commander David Park, your new executive officer. I've been overseeing the final preparations." Sarah shook his hand. "How long have these ships been here?" "They arrived 3 days ago, fully automated flight from Titan. Most of the crew doesn't even know they exist yet." Park gestured toward the closest vessel. "Would you like to see your new command?" The Phantom was smaller than she'd expected, roughly the size of a heavy cruiser but with a sleeker profile. As they approached, hidden hatches opened with whisper-quiet precision, extending a boarding ramp that seemed to emerge from the ship's hull without leaving any visible seams. "Advanced material science," Park explained, noticing her surprised expression. "The hull can reconfigure itself for optimal stealth characteristics. When all systems are engaged, this ship has the sensor signature of a small asteroid." Inside, the Phantom felt more like stepping into a piece of advanced technology than boarding a spaceship. Every surface was smooth and dark, with subtle lighting that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The bridge was compact but efficient, with stations that could be operated by a minimal crew. "Full complement is 60 personnel," Park said as they walked through the ship, "but she can be operated effectively by as few as 12 in an emergency. The AI assists with most routine functions." "AI?" Sarah stopped walking. "Since when do we have AI advanced enough to run a starship?" "Since about 6 months ago, apparently. The technical team briefed me yesterday, but honestly, most of it was over my head." Park led her to what appeared to be the captain's quarters. "What I can tell you is that this ship was built to do things that human ships have never done before." The captain's quarters were Spartan but functional, with a small desk and a viewport that currently showed the station's docking bay. Sarah sat down, trying to process everything she'd learned in the past few hours. "Commander, what's your honest assessment of our chances out there?" Park was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Captain, I've served on 15 different ships over the past 20 years. I've never seen anything like what's installed on these vessels. If even half of what the tech teams promised actually works, we're going to surprise some people. And if it doesn't work, then we'll find out just how good human improvisation really is. Sarah looked out the viewport at the other two ships in their docking cradles. Tomorrow, she would be responsible for 200 lives and humanity's first real chance to prove themselves in a galaxy that saw them as harmless children. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders like a familiar coat. "When do we meet the crew?" she asked. "Oh, 800 tomorrow. They're being transferred from various assignments throughout the fleet. All volunteers, all with exemplary service records." Park moved toward the door. "Captain, there's one more thing you should know." "What's that?" "The pirates we're going after aren't just using modified alien technology. According to intelligence reports, they're being supplied by someone with access to military-grade equipment from multiple species. This isn't just some ragtag collection of raiders." Sarah nodded slowly. "Someone's been equipping them specifically to target human interests. That's the working theory, which means this mission might be more than just anti-piracy operations." After Park left, Sarah remained in the captain's quarters, staring out at the strange ships that would soon carry her into the unknown. Tomorrow, she would meet her crew and begin the journey to the Outer Rim territories. In a few days, they would face an enemy that the galaxy's major powers either couldn't or wouldn't confront. For the first time in years, humanity would fight back. The thought should have been frightening. Instead, as Sarah finally headed back to her temporary quarters on the station, she found herself almost looking forward to it. The galaxy was about to learn something about humans that they'd never bothered to discover before. When cornered, humans didn't surrender. They got creative. 3 weeks later, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Phantom as it drifted through the Kepler Nebula, its stealth systems making the ship nearly invisible against the swirling cosmic dust. The nebula provided perfect cover for their approach to the Arcturus mining system, where intelligence suggested a major pirate operation was underway. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos from the sensor station. "Configuration matches the raider fleet that hit the Harmony colony last month." Sarah moved to the tactical display, where a three-dimensional representation showed the enemy formation. 12 ships ranging from converted freighters to what appeared to be a modified Krillian cruiser. They were positioned around the asteroid mining station like predators surrounding wounded prey. "Any sign of the miners?" Sarah asked. "Negative. The station's emergency beacon went dark 6 hours ago." Santos paused, consulting her readouts. "Captain, I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from that cruiser. It's definitely Krillian design, but the power output is off the charts." Commander Park joined them at the display. Intelligence was right. Someone's been upgrading these pirates with serious hardware. Sarah studied the enemy formation. In a conventional engagement, her 3 ships would be massively outgunned. The modified cruiser alone probably had more firepower than her entire task force, but conventional tactics weren't why they were here. "Tactical assessment, Commander Park. They're spread out to cover all approach vectors, but they're not expecting stealth vessels. Classic pattern for intimidating civilian targets, but vulnerable to coordinated attack." Park highlighted several positions on the display. "If we time it right, we could take out their communications hub and 2 escort vessels before they even know we're here. And then we face a modified Krillian cruiser with 9 remaining ships." Sarah shook her head. "No, we need something more decisive." She activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to engage a pirate fleet that has been terrorizing our outer colonies for the past 6 months. These raiders think they can prey on human settlements because they believe we're too weak to stop them." Sarah looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of her crew. Today we're going to teach them otherwise. Battle stations. The Phantom's bridge transformed as combat stations came online. The gentle hum of normal operations gave way to the focused energy of a ship preparing for war. Around the bridge, displays lit up with targeting data, system status reports, and tactical projections. "Wolverine and Taipan report ready," came the voice of Captain Torres from the Wolverine. "Awaiting your orders." Sarah settled into her command chair, feeling the ship's systems respond to her presence. The neural interface technology was still new, allowing her to connect directly with the Phantom's AI systems for enhanced tactical awareness. Information flowed into her consciousness like a sixth sense, showing her everything from power distribution to weapons status. "Begin Operation Shadow Strike," she commanded. The three ships moved with eerie silence through the nebula, their stealth systems rendering them invisible to conventional sensors. Sarah watched through the Phantom's advanced sensors as they approached the pirate formation, positioning themselves like pieces on a chessboard. The modified Krillian cruiser hung in space like a metallic giant, its dark hull bristling with weapons that could level a city. According to the intelligence briefing, this ship alone had destroyed 3 Terran Federation patrol vessels in previous encounters. The pirates called it the Nightmare, and for good reason. "Range to target 50,000 kilometers, reported Ensign Kim from the weapons station. "Quantum disruption array charging to full power." "What exactly does that array do?" Sarah asked, realizing she was about to find out the hard way. "Unknown, Captain. The technical manual just says to point it at something we want to stop existing." Sarah almost smiled at that. Earth Command's sense of humor hadn't changed, even in their classified weapons programs. "Wolverine, take position Alpha. Taipan, position Beta. On my mark, we light up their command structure." The 3 ships moved into their final positions. On the tactical display, Sarah could see the pirates beginning a boarding operation on the mining station. Small craft were docking with the civilian facility, while the larger ships maintained their protective formation. "Captain," Santos called from her station, "I'm picking up distress signals from inside the mining station. There are still people alive in there." Sarah's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about proving human capability anymore. There were lives at stake. "All ships, engage on my mark. Primary target is the communications array on the cruiser. Secondary targets are the escort vessels marked Alpha through Delta." She paused, feeling the weight of the moment. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're fighting for every human colony that's been told they're on their own." Mark. The Phantom erupted from concealment like a predator striking from shadow. The quantum disruption array fired, sending a beam of twisted space-time toward the Nightmare's communication array. Where the beam struck, reality seemed to fold in on itself, and the massive antenna array simply ceased to exist, leaving behind nothing but empty space. Simultaneously, the Wolverine and Taipan revealed themselves, their weapon systems blazing. Precise volleys of plasma fire struck 2 escort vessels, punching through their shields and armor with devastating efficiency. The escorts exploded in brilliant flashes, their destruction lighting up the asteroid field. "Enemy cruiser is turning toward us," Kim reported. "They're bringing their main weapons to bear." The Nightmare was massive, nearly a kilometer in length, with weapons systems that belonged on a military battleship. As it turned toward the Phantom, Sarah could see gun ports opening like the eyes of some ancient predator. "Evasive maneuvers," she commanded, feeling the ship respond instantly to her thoughts through the neural interface. The Phantom twisted through space with an agility that defied its size, sliding between asteroid fragments like a dancer avoiding obstacles. The Nightmare's first salvo lit up space with coherent energy beams, each one capable of vaporizing a small ship. But the beams passed harmlessly through space where the Phantom had been moments before. "Their targeting systems can't lock onto us," Santos reported with obvious satisfaction. Our stealth technology is confusing their sensors. Good. Kim, target their primary weapon systems with conventional weapons. I want to save the quantum array for something special. The Phantom's plasma cannons spoke, sending precisely aimed bursts toward the cruiser's gun emplacements. The range was extreme for conventional weapons, but the targeting AI compensated perfectly for distance and movement. Explosions blossomed along the Nightmare's hull as weapon turrets were destroyed or damaged. "Wolverine is engaging the remaining escorts," came Captain Torres's voice over the communication channel. "They're trying to form a defensive formation around the cruiser." "Taipan here. I've got 3 fighters moving to intercept." "Engaging now." Sarah watched the tactical display as her small fleet carved through the pirate formation with surgical precision. The enemy had superior numbers and firepower, but they were fighting an enemy they couldn't see clearly and couldn't predict. "Captain," Kim called out, "the cruiser is charging something big. I'm reading massive power buildup in their forward sections." Through the tactical display, Sarah could see the Nightmare's bow beginning to glow with barely contained energy. Whatever they were preparing, it was going to be devastating. "All ships, emergency scatter pattern," she commanded, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew they might not have enough time. The Nightmare's main weapon fired, sending a beam of pure destruction across space. The beam was wide enough to engulf a city block and powerful enough to crack a moon. It was the kind of weapon that had made the galaxy's major species feared throughout known space. But the beam passed harmlessly through empty space, where the 3 human ships had been. The Phantom and its companions had scattered like leaves in a hurricane, their superior maneuverability allowing them to avoid the devastating attack. "Now it's our turn," Sarah said grimly. "Kim, target the cruiser's power core with the quantum disruption array, full power." "Captain, are you sure? We don't know what that weapon will do to something that large." Sarah thought about the mining station, about the distress signals still coming from inside, about every human colony that had been told they were too weak to defend themselves. Fire! The quantum disruption array unleashed its full power toward the Nightmare's core. The beam struck the cruiser's central hull, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality began to unravel around the impact point. Space itself twisted and folded, creating a localized distortion that spread through the massive ship's structure. The Nightmare's hull began to compress and stretch as fundamental forces went haywire. What happened next defied conventional physics. The cruiser didn't explode. It simply stopped being there in any meaningful way. The quantum disruption had created a pocket of space where the normal rules didn't apply, and the Nightmare was caught in the middle of it. The ship folded in on itself, becoming smaller and smaller until it finally collapsed into a point of light that winked out of existence. The remaining pirate vessels, faced with the impossible sight of their flagship simply ceasing to exist, broke formation and attempted to flee. But the Wolverine and Taipan were waiting for them. "This is Captain Chen to all remaining vessels," Sarah broadcast on the standard communication frequency. "You have 60 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate what human weapons can do to fleeing targets." The response was immediate. One by one, the remaining pirate ships powered down their weapons and engines, transmitting surrender codes. "Wolverine, Taipan, secure the surrendering vessels. Santos, scan the mining station for survivors." "Reading life signs throughout the station," Santos reported. "Looks like most of the miners made it to the emergency shelters." As the immediate crisis passed, Sarah found herself staring at the empty space where the Nightmare had been. The quantum disruption array had worked beyond all expectations, but she was beginning to understand why it was classified. A weapon that could make something simply stop existing was the kind of technology that changed the balance of power in the galaxy. "Captain," Commander Park approached her command chair. "We're receiving a priority communication from Admiral Harrison on Earth. She wants a full mission report. Sarah nodded, but her attention was drawn to another incoming signal. This one was from the Galactic Security Council, transmitted on the emergency frequency reserved for major incidents. Put the council through first, she decided. The main display filled with the image of a Vrek security counselor, his reptilian features betraying obvious agitation. Behind him, Sarah could see other representatives gathering, their expressions ranging from surprise to what might have been concern. Human vessel. This is Security Counselor Thak of the Vrek's delegation. We have detected unusual weapon signatures in your vicinity. Explain your presence in this system immediately. Sarah stood, making sure her uniform was properly arranged. Counselor Thak, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation. We are conducting anti-piracy operations in accordance with Galactic Treaty 47A, which grants all member species the right to protect their civilian populations. The Vrek's counselor's expression shifted. Captain Chen, our sensors detected the destruction of a major vessel using unknown weapons technology. This is a matter of galactic security concern. The vessel in question was a heavily armed pirate cruiser that was attacking a civilian mining station. We responded with appropriate force to protect innocent lives. Sarah could see other aliens joining the conversation on the council's end. A Krillian military advisor leaned into view, his massive form dominating the display. Human captain, the vessel you destroyed was equipped with Krillian military technology. How did your small ships overcome such significant firepower advantage? This was the question Sarah had been expecting. The galaxy's major powers were used to conflicts being decided by raw firepower and superior technology. The idea that a smaller force could defeat a larger one through tactics and innovation seemed to confuse them. General, we used superior tactics, better training, and more advanced technology, she replied simply. The pirates underestimated us, and that mistake cost them. What technology? The Krillian pressed. Our sensors show impossible energy readings from your engagement. Sarah considered her response carefully. This was the moment when humanity could either reveal their hand or maintain their advantage through uncertainty. General, I'm sure you understand that specific details of our weapon systems are classified military information. What I can tell you is that the pirate threat in this region has been neutralized and the civilian population is safe. The council chamber erupted in discussion, with multiple species talking at once. Sarah caught fragments of conversation in various alien languages, but the general tone was clear. They were concerned, possibly even worried. Captain Chen, Counselor Thak regained control of the discussion. The Galactic Security Council will require a full report on this incident. We cannot allow unknown weapons technology to proliferate without proper oversight. With respect, Counselor, the Terran Federation is a sovereign member of the galactic community. We have the right to defend our citizens with whatever means we deem necessary. Sarah's voice carried a note of steel that hadn't been there at the beginning of the conversation. If the Council had addressed the pirate problem when we first requested assistance, this incident might not have been necessary. The implication hung in the air like a challenge. For months, humanity had requested help dealing with the pirates, only to be told that the matter was being referred to subcommittees and review boards. Now they had solved the problem themselves, and the galaxy's powers were suddenly very interested. Furthermore, Sarah continued, we have evidence that these pirates were being supplied with military-grade equipment from multiple species. The Terran Federation reserves the right to investigate how such weapons fell into criminal hands. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah could see the representatives exchanging glances, undoubtedly realizing that humanity had just shifted from being a problem to be managed to being a force to be reckoned with. We will be in contact, Captain Chen, Counselor Thak said finally. The Council expects full cooperation in our investigation. The Terran Federation looks forward to working with the Council on matters of mutual concern, Sarah replied diplomatically. We'll be happy to discuss our anti-piracy operations once the Council addresses our concerns about weapons proliferation to criminal organizations. The communication ended, leaving the bridge in relative silence. "Think they got the message?" Commander Park asked quietly. Sarah looked at the tactical display, where the surrendering pirate vessels were being secured by her escort ships. In the distance, the mining station was already beginning recovery operations, with grateful civilian crews emerging from their shelters. "Oh, they got the message," she said with satisfaction. "The question is what they're going to do about it." As if in response to her words, a new communication came through, this one on a secured Terran frequency. Admiral Harrison's face appeared on the display, wearing an expression that might have been pride. "Captain Chen, preliminary reports indicate that Operation Shadow Strike was a complete success. How are you feeling about your new command?" Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew, all of whom were watching her with obvious respect and confidence. Through the neural interface, she could feel the Phantom responding to her thoughts, ready for whatever came next. "Admiral, I think humanity just announced its presence to the galaxy, and I don't think they're going to underestimate us anymore." Admiral Harrison smiled. "Captain, you have no idea how long we've been waiting to have this conversation. Stand by for new orders. It seems the galaxy wants to discuss humanity's role in galactic affairs." As the communication ended, Sarah realized that everything had changed. 3 weeks ago, humanity had been the galaxy's pet project, tolerated but not respected. Today they were a force that couldn't be ignored. The fight was over, but the real test was just beginning. 6 months after the Battle of Arcturus, Captain Sarah Chen found herself in a very different situation than she had expected. Instead of commanding a small task force in the Outer Rim, she was standing in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, wearing her dress uniform and trying not to smile as some of the galaxy's most powerful beings treated her words like they mattered. The hall was an architectural marvel, built from crystalline materials that amplified sound and light in ways that made every speaker seem larger than life. Representatives from 47 different species sat in tiered sections around a central podium, their various forms creating a spectacular display of galactic diversity. And today, for the first time in human history, they were all paying attention to what a human had to say. "Captain Chen," announced the council speaker, a tall Zephyrian whose voice carried harmonics that made the crystal walls resonate. "You have requested to address the Council regarding recent pirate activity in the Outer Rim territories. Please proceed." Sarah stepped to the central podium, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon her. The last time she had been in this hall, she had been a junior officer accompanying Ambassador Williams to a trade discussion that had been largely ignored. Today, she was here as the commanding officer of the Galactic Anti-Piracy Task Force, a position that hadn't existed 7 months ago. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustics. "I come before you today to report that pirate activity in the Outer Rim has decreased by 93% since the implementation of our new anti-piracy protocols." A murmur ran through the assembly. The hegemony representative, a crystalline being whose facets caught and reflected light in complex patterns, leaned forward in apparent interest. "The protocols you refer to," interrupted General Korath of the Krillian Empire, "involve the use of weapons technology that has not been submitted for council review. This violates standard galactic security agreements." Sarah had been expecting this challenge. "General Korath, with respect, the Terran Federation has been a sovereign member of this body for 14 years. Our right to develop defensive technologies is protected under the same treaties that allow your empire to maintain its fleet of planet-killer dreadnoughts." The comparison was deliberate and pointed. The Krillian Empire's massive warships were legendary throughout the galaxy, each one capable of reducing a world to molten slag. For a human to casually reference them in the same breath as Terran technology was either brave or foolish. The difference Korath replied, his massive form rising from his seat, is that Krillian technology is known and understood. Your quantum weapons operate on principles that our scientists cannot explain. Perhaps, suggested a new voice from across the hall. That is because human scientists have achieved something that Krillian scientists have not. The speaker was Dr. Vexhai, a Zephyrian physicist whose research on dimensional mechanics had won several prestigious galactic awards. Her intervention surprised everyone in the hall, including Sarah. Dr. Vexhai, the council speaker acknowledged, you have studied the energy readings from the Arcturus incident? I have indeed. The quantum disruption technology demonstrates a level of understanding of subspace mechanics that surpasses current galactic standards by several orders of magnitude. Dr. Sear Vexhai's harmonics carried notes of what sounded like admiration. Rather than questioning its development, we should perhaps be asking ourselves why we didn't develop it first. General Korath's expression darkened. Are you suggesting that humans have superior scientific capabilities? I'm suggesting that they have demonstrated superior results, Dr. Vexhai replied calmly. The evidence speaks for itself. Sarah watched the exchange with growing amazement. 6 months ago, the idea of a respected Zephyrian scientist defending human technology would have been unthinkable. But the Battle of Arcturus had changed more than just humanity's reputation. Captain Chen, the council speaker, regained control of the discussion. Your report mentioned a 93% reduction in pirate activity. Please elaborate on your methods. Sarah activated the holographic display system, filling the center of the hall with a three-dimensional map of the Outer Rim territories. Red markers showed the locations of past pirate attacks, while blue indicators marked successful anti-piracy operations. The key to our success has been a combination of advanced technology, superior intelligence gathering, and rapid response capabilities, she explained, highlighting various sections of the map. Our stealth corvettes can reach any point in the Outer Rim within 12 hours of receiving a distress call. Stealth corvettes? This came from the Vrex delegation. Our sensors indicate you possess only 3 experimental vessels. Sarah's smile was carefully controlled. That's correct. 3 ships have been sufficient to pacify an area covering 67 star systems. The implications of that statement rippled through the assembly like a shockwave. 67 star systems was an area larger than some species' entire territories, and the Terran Federation was claiming to have pacified it with 3 ships. Impossible, declared Ambassador Feltar of the Hegemony. No force that small could effectively patrol such a vast region. You're absolutely right, Sarah agreed. Traditional patrolling methods would be completely ineffective across such distances. She manipulated the holographic display, showing a new layer of information. Suddenly, the map was filled with additional markers representing something the assembled aliens had never seen before. What you're looking at is the quantum beacon network, Sarah explained. Each beacon can monitor subspace communications and detect unauthorized military-grade technology across a range of approximately 3 light-years. When pirates attempt to organize attacks, we know about it before they've finished planning. The hall fell silent as the representatives absorbed this information. The implications were staggering. A monitoring network that could detect military technology and communications across interstellar distances would revolutionize military intelligence throughout the galaxy. How many beacons comprise this network? Asked Dr. Vexhai, her harmonics carrying notes of scientific curiosity. That information is classified, Sarah replied. What I can tell you is that the network covers all major shipping lanes in the Outer Rim and several core system approaches. General Korath stood abruptly, his massive form dominating his section of the assembly. You are claiming to have surveillance capabilities that extend into core system territories? Sarah met his gaze calmly. General, I'm stating that the Terran Federation has deployed defensive monitoring systems to protect our interests and those of our allies. The network's capabilities are calibrated to detect threats, not to spy on legitimate activities. And who determines what constitutes a threat? This came from the hegemony representative. The same people who determine when to respond to distress calls from mining stations under attack, Sarah replied. The same people who decide whether to help when civilian populations are being terrorized by pirates armed with military-grade weapons from multiple species. The pointed reference to the Arcturus incident hung in the air like an accusation. Everyone in the hall knew that the major powers had ignored human requests for assistance, dismissing the pirate problem as a minor concern, unworthy of their attention. Captain Chen, the council speaker intervened, are you suggesting that the established powers failed in their responsibilities to maintain galactic security? Sarah paused, recognizing the diplomatic minefield she was entering. Her next words would either establish humanity as a legitimate voice in galactic affairs or make them enemies of every major power in the galaxy. Speaker, I'm suggesting that the established powers have their own priorities and concerns, which don't always align with the needs of smaller species and outer rim populations, she said carefully. The Terran Federation has simply chosen to address security concerns that others considered beneath their attention. And in doing so, added a new voice, they have achieved results that the rest of us failed to accomplish. The speaker was Ambassador Kethron of the Outer Rim Alliance, a coalition of smaller species that had long been overshadowed by the major powers. His intervention was significant because the alliance represented nearly 20 different worlds. Ambassador Kethron, acknowledged the council speaker, you have observations to share? Indeed I do. For the past 18 months, the Alliance has filed formal requests for assistance with pirate activity affecting our shipping lanes. These requests were referred to subcommittees, regulatory boards, and impact assessment groups. Kethran's tone carried barely contained frustration. In the meantime, our civilian population suffered while we waited for bureaucratic processes to run their course. He gestured toward Sarah. Captain Chen and her task force accomplished in 6 months what the Council's security apparatus failed to achieve in 2 years. Perhaps it's time we acknowledge that effective action is more valuable than proper procedure. The murmur that ran through the assembly was different this time. Instead of surprise or confusion, Sarah detected something that might have been agreement from several sections. The Alliance formally requests that the Terran Federation be granted expanded authority for security operations throughout the Outer Rim territories, Kethran continued, with full Council recognition and support. General Korath's response was immediate. The Krillian Empire objects to any expansion of human military authority without proper oversight and weapons inspections. And yet, Dr. Vexhai observed, the results speak for themselves. Trade security has improved dramatically, civilian casualties have dropped to near zero, and shipping insurance rates in the Outer Rim have fallen by 60%. Sarah watched the debate unfold around her, realizing that she was witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic politics. For centuries, the major powers had dominated Council decisions through superior technology and military strength. But humanity had introduced a new variable into the equation: effectiveness. Perhaps, suggested the council speaker, we should focus on practical solutions rather than procedural concerns. Captain Chen, what would the Terran Federation require to expand its anti-piracy operations? Sarah had been hoping for this question. Speaker, the Terran Federation requests formal recognition of our Outer Rim security zone, encompassing the territories currently covered by our beacon network. We also request the authority to establish permanent security stations at key locations and the right to intercept vessels carrying illegal military technology. And in exchange? Asked Ambassador Feltar. In exchange, We guarantee safe passage for all legitimate civilian and commercial traffic, rapid response to security threats, and full transparency regarding our security operations with any council member that formally recognizes our authority. The offer was carefully structured to appeal to different constituencies. The smaller species would benefit from improved security, the major powers would receive transparency and oversight, and everyone would benefit from increased trade stability. The hegemony finds these terms acceptable, announced Ambassador Feltar, surprising everyone in the hall. Our mining operations have suffered significant losses to piracy in recent years. If the humans can provide effective security, we support their proposal. One by one, other representatives began voicing their support. The Outer Rim Alliance endorsed the proposal unanimously. Several core system species added their agreement, citing economic benefits. Even some of the major powers began indicating cautious approval. The Vrex Science Council supports the proposal, announced Councillor Thack, contingent upon regular technology sharing briefings and joint research opportunities. Sarah nodded diplomatically. The Terran Federation would welcome expanded scientific cooperation with the Vrex. General Korath remained standing, his massive form a reminder of the military power that had traditionally dominated galactic politics. The Krillian Empire reserves judgment pending a full review of human military capabilities and intentions. Of course, Sarah replied. The Terran Federation would be happy to host a Krillian military delegation at our convenience. The phrasing was subtle but significant. Instead of requesting permission or offering to submit to inspection, Sarah had invited the Krillians to visit as equals. The distinction wasn't lost on anyone in the hall. Very well, declared the council speaker. The matter of expanded Terran Federation security authority will be put to formal vote at the next council session. Captain Chen, thank you for your presentation. As Sarah left the podium, she was approached by several representatives who wanted to discuss details of the security arrangements. But what struck her most was the change in their attitudes. 6 months ago, these same beings had barely acknowledged her presence. Now they were asking for her opinions and treating her as an equal. Later, in the diplomatic reception area, Sarah found herself in conversation with Dr. Vexhai and Ambassador Kethran. Captain, Dr. Vexhai said, her harmonics carrying notes of curiosity. May I ask a personal question? Of course. When you first engaged the pirates at Arcturus, did you know that your actions would lead to this moment? Sarah considered the question carefully. Dr. Vexhai, when we entered that system, our only goal was to protect innocent people who were being terrorized by criminals. Everything else has been a consequence of that decision. And yet, Kethran observed, the consequences have been remarkable. In 6 months, humanity has gone from being dismissed as irrelevant to being recognized as a major player in galactic security affairs. Sarah looked around the reception area, where representatives from dozens of species were engaged in animated discussions. Many of those conversations seemed to center around the implications of human technology and capabilities. I think what we've really done is demonstrate that effectiveness matters more than tradition, she said. For too long, galactic politics has been dominated by who has the biggest ships or the oldest civilizations. But results speak louder than precedent. Dr. Vexhai's harmonics carried what sounded like amusement. Captain, you may have inadvertently started a revolution. If smaller species begin demanding results instead of accepting excuses, it will change the entire dynamic of galactic governance. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Sarah replied. As the reception continued around them, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that day in Ambassador Williams's office. Humanity had proven that they belonged at the galactic table, not as junior partners or pet projects, but as equals who could contribute meaningfully to galactic affairs. The quantum disruption technology had gotten the galaxy's attention, but it was the consistent results that had earned their respect. In the months following Arcturus, Her task force had intercepted 17 different pirate operations, rescued hundreds of civilians, and captured enough illegal weapons to supply a small army. More importantly, they had done it all with minimal casualties and maximum effectiveness. The galaxy had been forced to acknowledge that human methods worked, even if they didn't understand the technology behind them. "Captain Chen?" A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. Admiral Harrison approached, wearing the dress uniform of the Terran Federation fleet. "Admiral, I didn't expect to see you here. I wouldn't miss this for anything. The Council just voted to formally recognize the Terran Outer Rim Security Zone by a margin of 38-7, with 2 abstentions. Harrison's smile was genuinely proud. "Congratulations, Captain. You've just made history." Sarah felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. In less than a year, she had gone from commanding 3 experimental ships to overseeing security for an area larger than most species' home territories. But more than that, she had helped humanity find its voice in galactic affairs. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we build on what you've started. The Council has approved funding for 12 new security stations throughout the Outer Rim. We're also authorized to expand the task force to 20 ships and train security personnel from allied species." Admiral Harrison paused, looking around the reception area where alien diplomats were still discussing the implications of the vote. "Sarah, do you remember what I told you about proving that humanity deserves a seat at the adults' table?" "Yes, Admiral." "Well, congratulations. We're not just at the table anymore. We're helping to decide what's on the menu." As the evening continued, Sarah found herself the center of attention for representatives who wanted to discuss security arrangements, technology sharing agreements, and mutual defense pacts. The transformation was remarkable. In the span of a single battle, followed by 6 months of consistent results, humanity had redefined its place in the galaxy. The fight at Arcturus had been about saving lives and protecting innocent people, but its consequences had reshaped galactic politics in ways that no one could have predicted. Humanity had learned that respect couldn't be given or requested. It had to be earned through actions that spoke louder than words. Standing in the Grand Assembly Hall, surrounded by the representatives of dozens of worlds, Sarah realized that the real victory hadn't been the destruction of the nightmare or the elimination of the pirate threat. The real victory was standing here as an equal among equals, knowing that when humanity spoke, the galaxy listened. The fight that made the galaxy respect humans hadn't just been about superior technology or clever tactics. It had been about demonstrating the values that defined humanity, the willingness to protect others, the refusal to accept injustice, and the determination to do what was right, regardless of the odds. And now, for the first time in their galactic history, humanity had both the respect and the authority to act on those values on a truly galactic scale. The question was no longer whether humans belonged among the stars. The question was what they would do with their newfound influence to make the galaxy a better place for everyone who called it home.